Hello everyone, Darkaball Trades here. So as you may have noticed in my responses, I like to clear up any misunderstandings people may have about atheism and more specifically help people with their critical thinking skills. There is so much information flying at you every day, and everywhere you go, the people you see all have different perspectives than what you have. That's part of what makes people, societies, cultures so great. We can have different opinions and still get along. We share some positions and disagree on others. And the things that we have in common bring us together. And accepting the differences is what makes us better, more moral people. So when it comes to theists, I don't mind having the conversation, and I especially love answering questions, even if they seem difficult. But so often I see these videos with titles like today's, and I always feel dishonesty radiating from them. But maybe today will be different. So let's see what we're dealing with today. Today's video comes from a channel called John Groves. Now, I don't know what the verb to grove means. Is it a herbology term? But apparently John here does it. Or that's just his name, but the former is more amusing. But wait a minute. How does he have 263,000 subscribers with 64 videos? It looks like this was meant to be a shorts channel, but only 2 of his shorts have more than 2,000 views. So how the heck? You know what? I am overthinking this. Let's just move on. Well, John here has a short video titled, "Atheists Can't Answer This One Question." Well, to be fair, there are lots of questions that I can't answer, at least not completely and honestly. But that's okay. To be fair to my side, those questions are also ones that theists can't answer honestly and completely either. But I don't think it's going to be one of those questions. So now what do you think it's going to be? Make your predictions in the comments. No, really, I'll wait. As an edit before finalizing this video, I did look up "to grove," and apparently it's on Urban Dictionary. Nothing too NSFW, so if you're curious, look it up. Anyway, that should be enough time. Got your answer locked in? Good. So now let's find out. John, can I call you John? I'm going to call you John. What one question do you think atheists can't answer?
Only heaven silent for an answer.
First of all, I'm not going to comment on his shirt, but it doesn't set a good tone.
Why is murder wrong? See, atheists say that you don't need God to be good, but if that's true, why is murder wrong?
All right, not wasting any time, getting right to the question. Straight and to the point. That's what I like to see. All right, so this question gets thrown at atheists constantly. Why is murder wrong? This is the kind of question people like to imagine will leave us completely speechless, like a plot twist in a bad TV show. But this isn't the gotcha that theists, especially this John Groves guy, keeps thinking it is for a number of reasons. And believe it or not, I've never actually addressed this one head on. I've hinted at it, sure. But today, let's go all in. And fair warning, this is going to be a bit of a deep dive because if I'm going to answer this well, I need to talk about how morality even works. Now, I know I covered morality countless times, and maybe you're getting a bit tired of the same points over and over, though I argue that isn't my fault that theists can't come up with anything new. So for this one, I'm going to try to take it from a slightly different perspective. Let's start with where I'm coming from. My moral framework has 3 key points: moral subjectivism, situational ethics, and secular humanism. I know, for people not up on their terminology, this sounds like the start of the worst philosophy class ever. But stick with me, because these ideas aren't as intimidating as they sound. First up, moral subjectivism. This simply means morality isn't baked into the fabric of the universe. There isn't some cosmic scoreboard keeping track of good and evil. No moral gravity, or electrostatics if you're a filthy flat earther, pulling you towards virtue. Instead, morality comes from us, from our feelings, values, and agreements as human beings. It's something we create, not something we discover like buried treasure. Next, situational ethics. Think of this as the opposite of strict universal rules like lying is always wrong or never break the speed limit. Situational ethics says the context matters. Like, if you lie to save someone's life, is that really wrong? If you're driving 10 miles over the speed limit because you're rushing someone to the ER, should you really get a ticket? Life is messy, and our ethical decisions should reflect that. Finally, secular humanism. This is the foundation that ties it all together. It's about using reason, science, and compassion to promote human well-being. No divine commandments required. Basically, if we want to create a good world, let's start by caring about people and understanding how our actions affect them. Put these three together, and you've got a system that's flexible, evidence-based, and focused on reducing harm. It's like a really good recipe. Each ingredient matters, but it's the combination that makes it all taste just right. So, to the question, why is murder wrong? Well, here's my starting point. Well-being. I define good actions as those that increase well-being, and bad actions are those that decrease it. Pretty simple, right? And yes, this is still compatible with moral subjectivism. The subjectivity is in choosing well-being as the goal, but once you choose it, you can objectively measure whether that action helps or harms it. Whatever your thoughts on the guy, Matt Dillahunty has a great way of putting this, which I will paraphrase here. It's like playing chess. Humans invented the rules. That's subjective. But once you agree to play chess, there's an objective fact about whether a move helps you win or not. You can't just move your queen diagonally 3 spaces and forward 2 on the same turn and just yell, "Checkmate!" and expect anyone to take you seriously. So what does this have to do with murder? Well, murder is the unlawful premeditated killing of another person. And when you look at what murder does, tearing families apart, destroying trust in communities, creating fear, it's the ethical equivalent of flipping the entire chessboard onto the floor. It's chaos, and it makes everyone worse off. In almost every situation, murder causes way more harm than benefit. Sure, there are extreme edge cases where killing another human being may not be technically wrong, like self-defense or defending others, but those are rare exceptions and not the rule, as well as generally not considered murder in most states and countries. Under my framework, that makes murder wrong. I don't need a stone tablet from on high to figure that out. Just empathy, reason, and a basic understanding of human consequences. Now I know this was a long response, but I had to set up my position, and atheists are not required to hold the same position I do. Atheists are not a monolith, and maybe there are atheists who do struggle with this question. I'm just not one of them.
See, they show that the work of the law is written on their hearts, while their conscience also bears witness, is what Romans chapter 2 says about all of mankind.
So right away, we're going to Romans 2, verse 15, if anyone's curious. Every time I hear that verse about the law is written on our hearts, I picture God sneaking around at night like some kind of celestial graffiti artist with a Sharpie. Shh, don't wake him up. I'm just gonna scribble "don't steal" on their aorta. But John, there's a problem here. The Bible isn't relevant as evidence. You're quoting your holy book to make a universal claim about morality. Other religions do the exact same thing. The Quran says Allah wrote morality into our very souls. Hindu texts claim similar divine origins for ethics. Even the Book of Mormon and the Tao Te Ching weigh in on this. But I'm guessing you don't care about what the Quran says about morality, just like I don't care what the Bible says. So why should atheists treat your scripture as having special authority? It's like quoting Harry Potter to prove wizards are real. I've already shared my moral framework. Reduce harm, increase well-being, and treat others with respect. By that system, I am a good person. And honestly, John, under my moral framework, ignoring your shirt, I would venture to guess you're probably a good person too. You likely try to help people and avoid harm and try to make the world even a little bit better, even if you attribute those actions to your God, even if you're misguided in what you're doing. But maybe you're secretly awful. But the odds are you're just like most people, imperfect but trying. Now, if this law written on our hearts is supposed to reflect God's morality, then we need to talk about what that morality actually looks like. Because according to the Bible, God thinks the following are okay: slavery, genocide, child marriage, incest, cursing the innocent, threats of violence, human sacrifice, and so much more, including total obedience under threat of punishment. But that's not exactly a Hallmark card version of morality. If these laws were really written on our hearts, then either humanity collectively rebelled against them, or my heart came pre-installed with some much better software. In the end, John, you're doing what every believer does. You've built a worldview where your morality requires your God. But there's a colossal, titanic, monumental problem with your logic here. I can flip that logic completely around. I can claim that morality only works without God's, because divine authority actually corrupts our ethical instincts. I don't even need to believe it to make the point. Your reasoning and mine would be equally valid or equally empty. It all comes down to assumptions, and if those assumptions can't be tested, Quoting Romans isn't an argument. It's just preaching to the choir, literally.
Without God, morality collapses into opinion, and right and wrong become survival instincts with no absolutes.
I've heard this so often, I feel like I should get a loyalty card. 10 more punches and I earn a free sermon rebuttal. Now, I'm going to be far more generous than anyone should ever be to you on this point. Let's imagine, for the sake of argument, that you're right. Without God, morality is just opinion. Here's the problem. Adding God doesn't fix that. Even if I grant you every possible advantage, you still have no justification for why your particular God's opinion counts as the moral standard. Why Yahweh instead of Vishnu? Why not Zeus or Odin or a giant cosmic spaghetti monster? You've just shifted the question. Instead of whose opinion, we now ask who's God's opinion. But I would guess that you don't think Hindus, pagans, or even rival Christian denominations are justified in their claims either. So what makes your claim special? I'll tell you, nothing. It's just preference, which you wrap up in religious packaging, like that adds some air of credibility. Meanwhile, like I mentioned, I ground my morality in something measurable: well-being, harm reduction, flourishing. My system has visible, testable outcomes. Yours boils down to, my invisible friend says so. Now about this survival instinct stuff. Even if someone's morality were based entirely on survival, right and wrong wouldn't disappear. In that system, good would mean that which helps me survive, and bad would mean that which threatens my survival. Because humans are a deeply social species, survival usually, if not always, requires cooperation. In any modern society, if you go around murdering people, your quality of life plummets for a number of reasons. If you get caught, you get arrested, which leads to trials and jail time, which at a minimum is a huge inconvenience. Or your quality of life could end entirely in some states. But even if you don't get caught, consider the psychological effects, the fear of getting caught. Consider the problems it creates in the community. And if people suspect you are guilty, but you never get caught, your social standing takes a big hit as well. But if you help create a culture where murder is discouraged, everyone, including you, benefits. Historically, societies that embraced wanton violence did not last long, while those that valued cooperation thrived. This shows that even evolution itself explains why we see moral instincts without needing to invoke some kind of divine lawgiver. So now let's tackle that last claim of no absolutes. John, I don't even think you truly believe that. You might think you do, but I don't think you actually do. You probably think that murder, the unlawful premeditated killing of another human being, is always wrong. But what happens if your God commands it? This harkens back to what I talked about with all the atrocities that God seems to think are okay, but still wrote his morality on our hearts. The Bible is filled with moments where God orders people to kill, sometimes entire populations. Does that act suddenly stop being wrong? If so, it's not absolute. It's just wrong unless God says so otherwise. This is where apologists play word games. They'll say, well, if God commands it, it's not really murder. But imagine a human king ordering you to do the same thing. You wouldn't say, oh, well, then it's fine. You would still call it murder, John. Though I admit the analogy is not perfect because kings and laws, kings tend to be ignorant. Anyway. So why does a divine king get a special pass? Sounds like some kind of special exceptions to the rule, like a pleading of the special kind. So again, let me be as charitable as I can with this. God says to go kill that person over there. What do? Well, here's the dilemma. If you obey God, you end up in prison, or worse, because society doesn't share your God's rules. Even the most conservative fundamental Christian judge and 12 of the most fundamentalist Christian jury members would still not accept the plea that God told you to do it, so it must be okay. But if you don't obey because you know that deep down that's wrong, you're admitting that your own moral reasoning outranks his commands. But then what? Prison or hell? Either way, you've just demonstrated that morality is subjective even with your God. So when you say, without God there are no absolutes, what you really mean is, without my God, people won't agree with my preferences. But that's not a universal truth. Under your model, it's just an opinion. The so-called collapse into opinion has already happened. You've just slapped a divine label on it and called it eternal truth.
That's why even the atheists have to borrow from Christian morality to argue against Christianity.
Okay, sure, John. If I'm doing an internal critique, then yes, I temporarily step into your worldview so we can have a common frame of reference. If I want to show that the Bible contradicts itself, I have to play by its rules for the moment. But that's a debate strategy and not some kind of concession. It doesn't mean I secretly believe your God's morality is real, any more than reading The Lord of the Rings means I believe in hobbits. And honestly, I am so tired of how smug this point sounds. You may need to forgive me for a moment because I'm gonna rant for this one. Ahem. Why do some theists act like they're so star-spangled special, so self-aggrandizing, so egotistical that they think only their morality counts? As if they've been handed the exclusive rights to good and evil. And if you don't agree with them 100%, well, you're just wrong because I said so. It's not just arrogant, it's downright offensive. Imagine if I flipped this around and said, John, you can't even argue against my morality unless you first borrow from it. Would you accept that? But of course not. You would call it ridiculous, and you'd be right. So why should I accept it when you do the exact same thing? The truth is, simply disagreeing on the foundation of morality doesn't prevent us from evaluating each other's beliefs. Christians already do this with one another constantly. Is drinking alcohol wrong? Well, it depends on the denomination. What about dancing, gambling, or using caffeine? How about divorce, contraception, or same-sex relationships? Some Christians say yes, others say no. So even within your own religion, John, people accuse each other of being immoral based on the exact same holy book. If Christians can't agree on what counts as Christian morality, why on this earth would atheists need to borrow from it? This is not a unified system. It's a moral patchwork quilt held together by conflicting interpretations. And here's what really frustrates me. I don't need your foundation to evaluate your actions. In my worldview, which I remind you is based on reason, compassion, and human well-being, I can look at Christianity and ask, does this system overall cause harm or does it reduce it? And 9 times out of 10, I see Christianity borrowing from my worldview, not the other way around. Name one moral principle that has nothing to do with well-being at its root. Why should anyone care what your God thinks if following him leads to suffering? Why should anyone love him if he's cruel or unjust? Even the threat of hell is ultimately about well-being. It's fear of pain, plain and simple. Every moral question boils down to the lived experience of conscious creatures, not divine decrees carved into stone tablets. And here's the difference between us, John. I don't gatekeep morality. I don't tell you that you can't speak about right and wrong because you don't share my exact views. But you, and so many like you, keep trying to claim you've got an exclusive VIP pass to morality itself. I am so tired of this holier-than-thou attitude from many of these smarmy theists here on the YouTubes. Newsflash, people who act like that, they're never the heroes of the story. And if history is any guide, they're usually the ones we end up warning our kids about. Rant over.
Without God, saying murder is wrong is like saying pineapple on pizza is wrong. At the end of the day, it'd just be a preference.
This is simply another way to criticize the idea that morality is just opinion. We've already been over this, so let me try a different note. You're actually right, if a little dismissive and reductionist, that under subjective moral systems, saying murder is wrong can be like saying pineapple on pizza is wrong. But here's what you're missing. That comparison doesn't support your case. It actually completely undermines it. Think about it. Some people genuinely love pineapple on pizza, while others think it's an abomination. There is no universal agreement, just competing opinions. We can agree on that point. Now swap out pineapple for God's commands, and pizza for life for all you pedants out there. Which version of God's will do we follow? The one that says, "Thou shalt not kill," or the one that commands his follower to wipe out entire nations in the Old Testament? Your version of divine morality is like saying, pineapple is absolutely wrong because my favorite chef said so. But there are thousands of other chefs saying the opposite. Hindus, Muslims, pagans, even other Christians each claim their chef's recipe is the only true one. You're just picking the flavor you like and declaring it absolute, which is exactly what you accuse atheists of doing. So yes, John, morality is like pineapple on pizza. But that goes for your worldview too. If God's command is the only thing making murder wrong, then whether killing is moral or immoral is as arbitrary as whether pineapple belongs on pizza. The only difference is, at least pineapple debates don't end in holy wars, just household ones.
Now, let me be clear. Pineapple on pizza murders the flavor, so just don't.
As I'm not a fan of pineapple in general, let alone combined with cheese and bread and sauce, I would say we agree on this point. Don't at me, pineapple lovers. It's just opinion, remember.
But objective morality proves that there is a lawgiver. A law must have a lawgiver.
This one shows up so often, it should have its own theme music. This is the moral lawgiver argument. It usually goes like this. Premise 1. Every law requires a lawgiver. Premise 2. There are moral laws. Conclusion. Therefore, there is a moral lawgiver. Now, this line of reasoning was most famously popularized by C.S. Lewis in Mere Christianity, and while it sounds nice on the surface, as I mentioned in my video, Professor Dark Explains Logical Fallacies video on the equivocation fallacy, this argument is a textbook equivocation fallacy. The whole argument falls apart the second you look closely at the word law. The word law here has two very different meanings. When you talk about societal laws, like speed limits or tax codes, they're prescriptive. They tell you how you should behave. When we talk about moral laws, we're really being descriptive, observing patterns like empathy, cooperation, and harm avoidance. By mixing these two meanings, John commits the equivocation fallacy. It's like saying, gravity is a law. Every law has a lawgiver, therefore Newton personally keeps the planet spinning. No one thinks that Newton is up there spinning Jupiter like a basketball. He didn't create gravity, he just described it. Likewise, when we talk about moral laws, we're describing human behaviors and values, not proving some divine legislator exists. Now, that comparison was meant to be a bit absurd because I need something to keep me going through this. The problem with the logic here is the point. And even if this argument worked, it wouldn't automatically point to John's God. It could be Zeus, Odin, or even the flying spaghetti monster for all we know. Heck, it doesn't even need to be a sentient being. It could be my magical primordial space crystal. Saying moral laws exist, therefore Christianity is true, is like saying there's a painting, therefore it must be by Bob Ross. Nice try, but no. At the end of the day, this argument is less about proving a God exists and more about clever wordplay. Once you see the trick, the whole thing falls apart.
And his name is Jesus. And he died to forgive you every time that you've broken his law.
And there it is, the grand reveal. After all the arguments, we don't end with logic or evidence, but with a sales pitch. And let's be honest, we all knew it was coming. John, that's not an argument. That's a marketing slogan. It's like wrapping up a debate on physics by yelling, "Because Tony the Tiger says Frosted Flakes are still great." But if you want me to believe someone died to forgive me, first you need to show that 1. The rules they claim I broke are real and demonstrable. 2. I actually broke them, and it's even possible to be guilty of them in the first place. And 3. Why I should care. Until then, your dramatic ending is just like those infomercials that scream, "But wait, there's more!" Except in this case, what's being sold isn't a kitchen gadget, it's guilt. And it has the exact same persuasive power with me, none. So no, John, I don't need a divine coupon for quote-unquote sins I never bought. And that's the end of his video. I did cut off his sign-off, but I'll leave a link to the original video in the description so you know I didn't do any dishonest editing. So, what is he saying here? Remember that this video is titled, "Atheists Can't Answer This One Question." So what is that question? And why can't atheists answer it? Atheists can't answer the question, why is murder wrong? Romans 2 says God's morality is written on our hearts. Without God, morality collapses into opinion. Pineapple doesn't go on pizza. Objective morality proves a lawgiver. So now, what do you think? I know he didn't say a lot, but do you think John has a point and that this question is one that atheists can't answer? Or do you think that I took it on and demolished his talking point? Let me know in the comments below. Overall, I give John a 9 facepalmy Mr. Jesuses out of 10. He claims that without God, morality collapses, but provides no citations, no philosophical discussions, and no engagement with secular moral philosophy, e.g. Kantian ethics, utilitarian ethics, virtue ethics, etc. The only reference to anything remotely pretending to be any kind of scholarly is his mention of Romans 2, which is a theological claim and not an empirical argument. You have to accept it first before it matters, making it essentially begging the question. He puts forth a strawman representation of atheism by assuming atheists believe morality is just survival instincts, which ignores a wide range of secular moral systems. He continues to misrepresent atheists' positions by implying atheists must borrow from Christian morality, ignoring historical and cross-cultural evidence of non-Christian moral codes. He makes a category error by saying the law must have a lawgiver, which confuses natural laws, descriptive, with human laws, prescriptive. Gravity doesn't need a lawgiver. He condescends a complex moral debate into a soundbite, treating murder as if the only options are God says so versus it's a pizza topping preference. A lot of people would likely accuse him of lying, but he's more manipulative than outright deceitful. He starts the whole thing off with a loaded framing. The title, Atheists Can't Answer This One Question, is clickbait. Atheists can and have answered this question extensively. It's one of the oldest debates in philosophy, e.g. Plato's Euthyphro dilemma, secular ethics by Hume, Mills, Rawls, etc. He presents a false dichotomy. Either God exists or morality is just random preference. This ignores well-established positions like secular humanism or evolutionary ethics. His whole video pretends to pose a philosophical challenge, but shifts to evangelism with, "His name is Mr. Jesus and he died for you." This indicates that the real goal isn't dialogue, but conversion. None of the counter-arguments are acknowledged, and he never mentions secular ethical frameworks, which suggests either, at best, ignorance, or more likely, deliberate omission. I gave him leniency because of 2 points. First, he is being consistent with what he believes in the Bible, referencing Romans 2, so at least he mentions his poor grounding, but grounding nonetheless. The second is that he doesn't outright lie, he just grossly oversimplifies and ignores complexity. That's it for this one. So now, what do you think? Do you think this takedown was thorough enough to put this discussion to bed once and for all, at least for atheists? Or do you disagree and think I missed something important? Let me know in the comments below. Now, if you appreciated this arguably over-complex response, show that by hitting that like button. And if you'd like to have more detailed responses to under-detailed arguments, hit that subscribe button to get new, fresh videos delivered to your YouTubes every week. And speaking of fresh, I need to give the freshest thanks of all to my patrons, especially Clamus, Anima, and Sora, who are the freshest of all cheese bags that hold the smoked content that is my channel. And if you'd like to join the cacophony of cheese flavors, you can join them for as low as a single dollar a month at patreon.com/darkofalltrades. What do you all think of the custom art for each of these members, huh? I have a pretty good artist friend who makes custom art, and she is super busy, but will always find time to help me out. For a price. It's her job after all. And I cannot thank these people enough, nor can I ever show enough gratitude for everyone who likes, comments, subscribes, shares a video, hangs out with me in the live chat or the Discord, everything that you do, every little thing that helps the channel. Thank you all so much. I'm working with an idea that may include me doing live YouTube videos, though nothing is certain yet. So stay tuned for more as that hopefully develops. And since I can't thank you enough, all I can do is try. So here's a little bonus as a happy little extra. This is something I love to think about, and I think more people should really ponder on. If you zoom out and look at all human societies across history, it's like we're living in a giant moral zoo. Every culture has its own rules, taboos, and ideas about right and wrong. Some of them seem bizarre to outsiders. What one society praises, another punishes. What is super interesting about this is that despite all the differences, some patterns emerge. Those patterns are what theists who make this objective morals argument like to try to co-opt as the moral law written on our hearts. Most societies frown on murder, theft, and wanton cruelty, but these are not because some deity said so, but because communities that discourage harm tend to survive and thrive. Cooperation, fairness, empathy, these traits pop up again and again in civilizations that never had contact with each other. So what does that tell us? Morality isn't some mystical gift handed down from on high. When looked at closely, it's more like evolution. Humans figuring out through trial and error how to live together without destroying each other. It's messy, imperfect, and constantly changing, but it works. And that, to me, is far more impressive than any commandment carved in stone. And you can find countless studies and research papers on the differences in morality throughout different countries and cultures. So, if nothing else, this shows that Christianity does not have any exclusive rights to morality. This should be the first thing anyone points out when any theist tries to even hint at it. I don't know about you, but I don't take my morals in tablet form. Thanks for hanging out with me to the end. It is tough to find points that aren't addressed over and over, and I'm constantly looking for the best arguments. So if there's something you'd like to see, I love suggestions. Leave it in a comment or hop on my Discord, where I have a specific channel on there dedicated to video suggestions. I love helping people, and that is really the whole goal of the channel. So drop some feedback, spark the conversations, be good to your fellow humans, and as always, keep learning.
So that's why my religion